see this obliteration. Do we have a queen sack on the board, ladies and gentlemen? Kostya was like, I know this is being streamed. I'm gonna be fancy. Oh my god. Oh, that's so beautiful. This is absolute cinema.
Hello, I am back with another video. First off, let me apologize. I know it's been a while since I released content on this channel. I've been a little bit out of the content game. I was in Europe for 2 months, then I was back from Europe. But I am still very much into it. In fact, I'm more focused on the chess side. I've been training a lot. I've got another tournament coming up in a month that I'll talk about at the end of this video. But for this video, I wanted to talk about my experience and share some of my games from my most recent event, an open tournament I played last month in northern Italy, and that was the first Vigevano Open. So this is the last tournament on my recent Euro trip. So I was in Europe for 2 months. I played 4 different events. I started with the Reykjavik Open and the Kostya Open. I gained a couple of points there. Then I went to Spain for the Killer Chess Training Camp, which was a lot of fun. I got to work with Grandmaster Jakob Akkard for about a week, and I got a lot out of that. I posted some content on this channel from that camp. And then right after the camp, we had the Killer Chess Training Tournament, where I did not do so well. I ended up losing something like 9 rating points, everything I gained in Reykjavik and Kostya. Then I had a bit of a break, and I ended up playing another tournament, a smaller event in Italy, which is what this video is going to be about. And this is actually the first tournament of its kind. It was a 7-round tournament in Vigevano, and they normally do, I believe, kids events there, but this was their first time running a tournament for adults. So this was a 7-round tournament. The time control was 60 plus 30. And it was an above 20 tournament. So you have to be over 20 to play the tournament, because they had a separate section for juniors, which was kind of cool. So I didn't have to deal with the the underrated kids. And additionally, what also made this tournament special is that they invited a number of streamers to promote and play the event. So I was there along with a number of other awesome creators, and actually got to play a couple of them. You'll see those games here. And so that was fun too, because then it was like definitely a very good group of people in the tournament, and of course it was also just enjoyable to play the event. And of course, as you might have seen from the title, I ended up winning the tournament, which was very cool. Going into it, I should be clear, I was the top seed. I was the only international master in the field, and I was the highest rated player, going in with like a FIDE rating of like 2350. But there was a number of other players above 22, I think a couple players above 2300 as well. So a number of masters and other decent players. So definitely wasn't easy, and wasn't a sure thing at all going into it that I would be winning the event. In fact, going into it, I was quite nervous that I wouldn't win it, because one mistake and like you don't win the tournament, and then that's it. It's like a big failure if you're the top seed. So I was definitely quite nervous about it. My chess hasn't been at a real confident level as of late, especially after the last tournament in Spain where I lost some points. But yeah, I know I had to try to go in and do my best. Oh, let me just say, because people are always asking. So yeah, I'm definitely very much on the hunt for GM. I'm still fairly motivated to go for it. I am training a lot here at home in St. Louis. I've got another tournament coming up next month already. And yeah, I'm spending a lot of time working on chess, not so much time like making content as I should be, but I'm hoping to change that moving forward. So let's get into the games. And in this first round, I was actually paired against one of the streamers in the event, Zoe Zellner, who I believe goes by Zoe Z on Twitch and Instagram. I actually think she's not streaming all the time. She's more of a creator. But anyways, this was our first time playing over the board. And she's, I believe, from the US, just like me. And I went in this game. I started with d4, and there was no time to prep for this first round. We only just had time to like set up our cameras and stuff, because a lot of us were live streaming the board. So I didn't really know what to expect going into it. I decided to play d4. Lately, this year I've been kind of serving with both hands in chess, like playing d4, e4, knight f3, even some games with c4, which is kind of cool. I feel like chess is a very vast game and I like playing different positions. But for this event, I decided like I wanted to mainly stick to d4. One of the main pieces of advice I got from Jakob Agard when we worked together in Spain and he looked over my games is he told me that I needed to keep it simple and stop trying to reinvent the wheel in every game and be ultra creative. I don't know if I did a great job of that in this event, but I was definitely trying to keep it simple for the most part. So I've mainly been a d4 player in my life, so this is kind of what I'm most used to. So I decided to just go back to my roots, so to speak, and play some of these classic Queen's Gambit positions. So c4, black went e6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, and of course there's many different move orders here, but I went for the bishop f4, Queen's Gambit decline, which has been pretty fashionable for the last like 10 years or so. So castles e3, a6, queen c2. Here black takes on c4. Like maybe this is a bit controversial because normally black is advised to wait for white to move the bishop before taking on c4 in these kinds of positions. But I think these days chess is more of a concrete game, and I actually feel like this is probably fine because black gets to just advance their play with b5, bishop b7. Now they get to play c5 and so on. It would save a tempo not to take on c4, but then black has to come up with a different move, and then it's not so obvious what's the best move here for black. Maybe knight d7 is still flexible. I don't know if it would change a lot, but anyways, I think this way actually of playing is totally reasonable. By the way, I should mention Zoe's FIDE rating going into the event was 1750, but I also saw that she had gained something like 100 points in her last tournament. So clearly her FIDE rating is that of like a typical US player, which is probably lower than their usual strength because there's a lot of tournaments in the US. Not all of them are FIDE rated. So a lot of US players have kind of underrated FIDE ratings, much like you would see, in other parts of the world too. So the game here develops pretty, I would say, typically bishop to b7. And then I castled knight d7. I played rook f to d1, just kind of anticipating that black's move is going to be, or black's plan is going to be to play c5 in these positions. So it makes a lot of sense to put the rook on the d file, kind of looking to go dc at the right moment. Here black played h6. Maybe not the best move. It's a reasonable move because the pawn, of course, was kind of under pressure, and now black has the freedom to move the knight from f6. But yeah, I think black has probably better moves here. Black can't play c5 right away because white will take, let's say bishop takes knight e5. This is kind of annoying, putting pressure on the d file. And then if black takes the knight on e5, there's bishop takes h7 check, and white is winning the queen. And so this is good for white. But black can maybe prepare c5, so maybe like queen c8 might be reasonable here, getting the queen off of the d file and then looking to play c5. And if black can play c5, then black is generally just doing completely fine in these positions. One thing I'm not super worried about is like bishop takes f3, because gf3, and then I think white's light square bishop is quite good. But I should say in a lot of these positions, if black has already gotten c5 in, so here in this move order, white would take on c5 and then keep the structure compact and white would be safe. But if black already had c5 in and then took on d4, or was able to take on d4, and white had to take back with the e-pawn, that structure would be very weak because the double pawns would be isolated. So food for thought. So h6, I went rook ac1, and this is also not best. So what I should have done actually is just play for a pretty classic idea, which, okay, for whatever reason I didn't want to do, a4. This would have been good, provoking b4, and then after knight e4, white would have a nice advantage here because I'm basically preventing black from being able to play c5 so comfortably. And if black trades on e4, takes, queen takes e4, white is very active here. Black isn't quite ready to play c5 yet because I'll take and there'll be drama on the d file. And yeah, I think white has a clear edge here. So that was kind of a simple idea to get an advantage, a4. Black could also play like c6, but then black is passive. They're not getting c5 in, and white should be happy. But I went rook c1, which is a natural move, including the rook on the c file, but it doesn't stop black from playing c5. So rook c8, preparing c5. And now I go for e4. And okay, I give this a question mark because this is based on what the computer was thinking during the game. I didn't think this was a bad move. I actually thought this was fine. Basically, my idea was to meet c5 with d5, where black, of course, cannot take twice because then there'll be a check on h7, and black will lose a piece on d5. So with this kind of operation, I thought I was just like fighting for the center, right? Like taking more space. So I pushed d5, and I was calculating a lot of stuff with, for example, if black pushes b4 here, attacking the knight, then I would probably take on e6 and drop the knight back, and then black structure is weak and white is doing pretty well. I have the c4 square, knight g3, and so on. But of course c4 came, which I think is more logical, and I dropped back, bishop e2. And yeah, basically I was looking to either play d6 or d takes e6, and I thought actually I was doing quite well here. Black goes bishop c5, which to me felt like a concession because, okay, now I can take on e6, and black has to take with the pawn, and this definitely feels like a weakness. And now I thought for a little bit, and there wasn't a lot of time here, so keep in mind these games are 60 plus 30, so I push e5. And at this point, actually, I was starting to think quite aggressively because I do have the d file, and with e5, I'm opening up the queen on c2. So my idea here was that if the knight were to drop back somewhere like 98, then actually I think I was very seriously going to consider sacrificing on h6 here. I don't know if I was going to do it in this exact variation, but that was kind of the idea, to look for these kinds of things after takes and check. Let's say knight g7. Maybe I would play queen takes h6 here. I'm not sure. And look for knight to g5 type ideas. And yeah, I'm a little skeptical of it looking at it now. Of course, black can like take on f3 and stuff. But anyways, that was kind of one of the things I was considering in the game. Of course, white can also continue slowly and just like drop the bishop back after the knight moves, like bishop to g3. Or, for example, on knight h5, I think I was going to play bishop e3 and then offer this exchange, where after takes, wasn't quite sure like how to evaluate this position, but I thought the knight on h5 is not feeling great here. And I have this threat of queen to g6 where I'm hitting the e pawn and the knight as well, which looks pretty annoying. So, yeah, that I thought was in my favor. And I wasn't sure what black was going to do. I think I was expecting either knight h5 or maybe knight d5 I think would be a blunder, because on knight d5 I could take and go for this check, and now the knight can't even block on g7, so here white would just be kind of picking everything up, and then the knight on d5 falls. So yeah, definitely not that. But my opponent ends up surprising me, and she goes bishop takes f2 check. And yeah, when she played it, I like definitely had a bad feeling about it, because you never want to see this kind of move show up against your position. And I felt like, okay, I pretty much have to take. King takes f2. And now black goes knight to g4 check, but I was actually quite worried about queen b6 as well. Because if black throws this one in, then my king might be in real trouble. If I go back king f1, there's knight to g4. And queen f2 is a threat, the bishop is hit. If the bishop goes to g3, there's knight e3 check, and I'm losing the queen and losing the game. So on queen to b6, I could go king e1, but then the same knight to g4 is really unpleasant. Like black's attack is just very strong. f2 is hit, and the rook is open, the bishop is open as well, and yeah, just looks super scary. Maybe white can take on d7 and try to survive the attack, but it's, yeah, very, very dangerous. So I was thinking about like knight to d4 here, but then black can go like knight to g4 check or knight h5. Knight h5 I wasn't thinking about during the game, but knight g4 check I saw. I thought this might be scary, because if I take, I'm 2 pieces up, but black takes 1 piece back, and then they're going to take on d4 as well. So they're getting both pieces back, and they've won a pawn, and my king is open. So it's like my position is actually just bad. So typical like first round where all of a sudden you're like, oh, like you could be in trouble. Fortunately, my opponent played knight g4 check, so I didn't have to decide on queen b6 what to do. On knight g4, the king has to come out to king to g3. I don't really have another choice here because the bishop is hit on f4. So if black takes on f4, then she wins her piece back with an extra pawn and just great position. So I really have to kind of, out of principle, play king g3 and defend the piece. And this is actually what I had calculated before. So when I played e5, I didn't miss bishop takes f2. I just thought if black does take, I'm taking, and knight g4, I'll play king to g3, and it looks a little annoying, but I didn't quite see how black was going to kill me here. So game continues, bishop takes f3, which was not best. I take back because now I'm hitting the knight on g4, and so black's not really in time to get the attack in. So basically, actually, I think she played the wrong move order. She should have started with rook takes f4. Because here, after king takes, bishop takes f3. Now if I recapture the bishop, then queen g5 check comes in. And this is a huge problem for white. If the king goes back, it's knight e3, and again, the queen is gone. And if the king moves, then I think this one is mate, and I think there's queen takes e5 mate, and I think there's knight c5 mate. No, that's not mate. But yeah, two checkmates is enough. Knight c5 was mate in 2. So that would have been really bad. On rook takes f4, my plan was to go rook takes d7, which I thought was clever because queen takes d7, then I can take, and now I'm not getting hit with queen g5 check. But okay, according to the engine, knight takes e5 exists, and here black is doing really well, which I yeah, just didn't see during the game. Again, it was a 60-minute game, so no time to calculate everything. And yeah, for those wondering, actually, according to the engine, here black was actually doing really well, like without sacrificing. So knight g4 would have been very strong, with the idea actually to sacrifice after bishop g3 to take on f2, which is actually quite surprising. Like I wasn't considering this at all during the game, but black goes queen b6, knight takes e5, and has 2 pawns for the piece, but more importantly, my king is just kind of getting opened up. Black wants to take a bunch of times on f3 or go knight to g4, which is very painful. And yeah, my pieces just actually aren't set up to defend here. So this could have gone bad quickly. Knight h5 was also good, actually. Bishop e3, and then here knight f4 would have been really nice, again, according to the big stockfish. And yeah, black is actually, like, now that you see it, like, black is actually very active. Like, 2 bishops on the diagonals, a rook on f8 is really good. White has this one measly pin on the d file, but black, will quickly unpin here. And then, yeah, the e pawn will be a problem, and yeah, black is doing great. So this was actually a bit fortunate the way it turned out. King g3, black takes on f3, I take back with the pawn. And now rook takes f4 is too slow because I'll take the knight, not the rook. And here I'm still a piece up, and black has given up some material. So like the bishop on b7. So here black's attack is actually not good enough, and white should be winning. Rook f1 coming. So black played knight takes e5, but now I felt like I should be having things under control because there's no like real obvious threats. It's only 2 pawns for the piece. I have 2 bishops also, so I thought that here actually white should be close to winning. But okay, I tried to be very solid here. So queen e4, and so I actually tried to follow like a couple of things that are useful in defense. So hopefully this is useful for folks. So when you're defending, there's a couple of things you want to do. Number one, you want to try to bring pieces closer to the king. You obviously want to try to stop threats or anticipate your opponent's ideas before they reach you, but you have to be very concrete, so you can't like allow simple tactics or blunder into stuff. So as long as you're avoiding the blunders, basically, yeah, you just want to be bringing more pieces near your king and eventually finding a safe square for the king. Here, it's not so easy for me to run with the king because black will be able to come in with queen h4. So I also wanted to be careful here and actually use the king a little bit to help defend itself, which is kind of an advanced thing, but sometimes you can definitely do it. So queen f6 and rook d6, just kind of improving my pieces. Black still has no real threat, so I'm just kind of improving the rook. I'm eyeing the e6 pawn, so now the knight on e5 is pinned. Knight g6 was played. So okay, the knight wasn't really pinned. If I take here, then of course I'm losing the piece back, so that would not be good. But I do go back, bishop to e3. And now e6 is a target. So black played knight d e5. and I went a3. I really like this move actually, because at first it feels like white should be doing something on the king side, but I really can't go f4 because queen h4 check would be really a problem. And then black's pieces do break in. Probably I'm losing on f4 next move, so that would be bad. But otherwise, it's not so obvious what to do. If I move my bishop, I allow queen g5 check, and the rook on c1 hangs. So I could just play like rook to d1. I think this would be a natural move, but I realize one of black's ideas in the position is to go b4. And this is a bit unpleasant because the knight doesn't have such a great square. I actually really wanted to play like knight d5 and make this work, but the issue is black can take and my queen is also hit. So here I'm just kind of giving back my extra piece. So a3, I decided like the opponent doesn't have a lot of time. You're down a piece. Let's just not allow counterplay. And here black played queen e7. So yeah, if black has nothing to do, just goes back. I go rook to d1. Now we're just continuing to improve my position. And here comes rook to f4. And so at this point, like black just couldn't really keep waiting. And now white is ready to even just like start taking stuff like rook takes a6. So black really has to do something. She decides to sacrifice another exchange, but it really wasn't enough. I take queen h4. I go back. Takes. I go back. Rook f8. But now white is up a rook and black just has a couple of threats, but pretty easy to deal with. Also, I'm taking another piece immediately. So now it's rook and knight. Knight h3. If queen h3, just rook to g1, I would just deal with it easily. So black tried knight h3, now knight e4. Everything's covered, and yeah, the game ended here after rook to g1. So first game jitters, typical, not perfect. During the game, actually felt like, yeah, like I was a little bit better, and then my opponent sacrificed a piece, and then I took the piece, and then it wasn't enough, and I won. But actually, if you check the engine, it was like, no, black actually had a lot of opportunities. She kind of misplayed the attack, but yeah, things could have gone sour very, very easily. But yeah, things are always very obvious after the game with the engine. During the game, yeah, neither of us were seeing like half of those ideas basically. So I don't know. It's hard to say whether I got away with one here or not. But anyways, on to game 2. I was playing black against another streamer, Agni S, goes by I think chess with Agni on Twitch, also on YouTube, and yeah, this was a fun game. So e4, c5, knight c3. I decided to play e6. Lately, I've been playing all kinds of different Sicilians, but when white starts with knight c3, I like playing e6 because usually knight c3 players are going for some kind of Grand Prix attack or closed Sicilian, and I think e6 setups are more flexible there. Bishop c4. So I wasn't expecting this one. And yeah, I wasn't not really like up to date on the theory here with all the bishop c4 lines. In the past, they didn't really make sense, especially against e6. like the drawback of playing bishop c4 in like a d6 structure is that black could play e6 and then blunt your bishop. So here white plays it with the pawn already on e6. But of course these days there's all these like different setups, and yeah, pretty much everything is playable. But I go a6, and my idea is, okay, I want to go b5. White goes a4 to stop that. But now I did weaken the b4 square in the future, so I feel like this inclusion is kind of nice for black. So knight c6, d3, and knight f6. So now the idea is to play d5 and fight for the center. And here I think white should probably just go knight f3 or knight ge2, just develop the knight. If I go d5, bishop drops back, bishop e7, castles. I think this is a pretty normal position. Both sides can keep developing. I don't have a ton of experience here, but yeah, I think black is comfortable. I've got the center, but white is fine as well. But in the game, white played bishop f4, which didn't feel right because it just felt like white was violating the rule, like knights before bishops. Like the bishop comes down on f4. It's not clear that it really wants to be on f4. I did get the idea. I think the idea was to like prevent the queen from coming to c7 and taking like some squares away from black's pieces, but d5 comes, and the bishop on f4 is actually kind of a target, as we'll see in some lines. So here white drops back, bishop to b3, and yeah, something came over me. I decided to play c4, which I thought was kind of a cool idea, because now if white takes on c4, I'll go d4, and the knight is kicked away, and I can take on e4, which I thought was pretty good for black. Like knight e2, knight takes e4, And I've picked up white's e-pawn. The bishop on b3 looks very bad. I have maybe like bishop b4 check coming in the position, or queen a5, e5 as well. So this looked pretty nice for black. So I kind of like this move, c4. I thought actually it's really, I mean, it's very ambitious actually to play like this with black. You have to be really careful because it's not like white has really committed any huge crimes yet. So to play frisky with your pawns like this, to me it felt like a concrete thing, not like white was like had already done something wrong, but that it seems to work, and so why not play it? So white went bishop a2, which I did not think was correct, because now the bishop really gets buried here. I thought white should take on d5, because here if I take back, then dc4, I'm not winning a pawn with d4 anymore. So this is very different. White can play knight d5 and is doing great. So on ed5, of course, I would take the bishop, and we would probably get something like this. D takes c6, I take on c2, queen c2, b takes c6. In this position, I thought was probably close to equal, but in general, I felt comfortable with black. I've got the bishop pair, especially the light square bishop is going to be good. I can put it on b7, play c5, knight d5 somewhere, bishop b7. I thought I'm reasonably solid there. White has a couple weaknesses like d3 and b2. I have one weakness, so I thought this is okay for me. But I thought that's what white should do, and then I was perfectly willing to play that position. But after bishop a2, now I definitely started to feel good, because I felt like I can get the initiative here, because white has lost some time with the bishop. So I played knight to b4, and yeah, this is again a very concrete move. So I'm playing very concrete this game, not simple chess at all. Simple chess would be like bishop to b4, which I think is actually better than what I did, and then just like castling and just having a very, very nice center. White still can't take on c4 because of d4, among other things as well, but here it's really bad. But I play knight to b4. So my idea here actually not so much that I wanted the bishop, but rather I wanted to take on d3, take on e4. So for example, if white develops the knight here, then I'm taking on d3, taking on e4, and I have knight d3 check. So this is pretty annoying for white. And then the king isn't castling, and I can keep developing like bishop to c5, or maybe knight g4. I think a couple options here. Of course, I could consider taking on f4, or maybe b2. Probably not though. But yeah, this I felt like was nice for black. And so if white has to go back bishop to b1 to defend this, then I thought, okay, of course. Well, how can knight b4 be a bad move if white has to play bishop to b1? And then here, I think my plan was to probably take and maybe even go for the endgame, which I thought would be pretty comfortable for black, because yeah, bishop on b1 doesn't look great. So white goes e5. And I thought this move made a lot of sense, because now white is getting rid of the tension in the center. So if I go back, like knight to d7, for example, then white could play d4. And the bishop on a2 looks horrible, but actually it does have a future. It's going to go back to b1, and then eventually white will play c3, and then the bishop will be beautiful. So in the meantime, I'm playing a French, where I've already committed to c4. So it's a weird French, because the bishop is misplaced, black's committed the pawn to c4. I don't have the pressure on d4, but I felt like white's position actually made some sense here. Maybe black is fine, but that's white's idea. So I didn't really want to allow that after e5. So of course I was drawn to moves like d4. This was one of my first thoughts. And so I considered a couple moves here. I considered d4, c takes d3, which I ended up playing, and knight takes bishop as well. I won't bore you guys with all the details, but basically I just thought that taking on d3 was the best move order. Because now if white takes back on d3, I was going to play d4 here, and let's say knight e2, then my plan was to play knight h5. And I don't quite remember why I didn't like d4 right away. But yeah, anyways, the turn was a month ago. I apologize. But yeah, I thought taking on d3 is just more accurate here. But there's one nice idea I do remember. After d4, knight e2, knight h5, for instance, the bishop is hit on f4. And if white drops back, let's say bishop g3 or bishop d2, then I have this very funny trick. Knight takes a2 and queen to d5. This one's hard to forget. It's like a very, very nasty double attack against the rook on a2, and of course, threatening queen takes g2 as well, which wins the other rook because it's now possible to defend the rook on h1 because I have knight takes g3, knight g3, knight takes g3. So that was a very nice double attack. So I was definitely kind of eyeing this trick. So I take on d3, and yeah, I was expecting white to take back, but of course white can also take on f6, which I was not afraid of. But this actually ends up happening in the game, so I was kind of happy to see it. So e takes f6, because now the game gets very sharp and interesting. And here I just take back, queen takes. I could maybe take on c2 with the knight and take the rook, but I thought this was stronger because here I've picked up a second pawn. I've sacrificed a piece, but I've gotten the second pawn. I have a tempo against the bishop, and now of course I'm ready to play knight takes c2 check and then take the rook on a1 next move. So that means I'm getting a third pawn and the rook. So I get a rook and 3 pawns against 2 minor pieces, and maybe white's king gets a little bit messed up. So I thought I'm getting a much better deal here as black, although the position of course gets very, very sharp. So now bishop to g3. This was definitely a mistake though, because knight takes c2 check, all of a sudden white cannot go king to f1, which she would like to do, but now king f1 is met with knight e3, winning the queen. So instead, the king is forced to go to d2, and then black's position is definitely good. So this was a slip. I think white should have tried bishop d2 here, and then it wouldn't have been so clear. Like takes king f1. I mean, I think black is better, but it wouldn't be super easy, although it wasn't really easy in the game either. But after bishop c5, knight f3, let's say takes, for example, castles. I think black is winning here, but I think white would probably have better chances than in the game, though black is still doing well because of the material. After bishop g3, though, the king is forced out to d2, and here I could take the rook on a1. I decided to go bishop to b4 first. These attacking positions are very hard to play because it's always hard to figure out whether you should go for the material or just focus on developing. But I decided to play this one, threatening d4. So if white saves the rook, well, then I'm playing d4 and winning back my piece. So that's not really working for white. So she played king takes d3, which I thought made a lot of sense, kind of forcing me to take on a1. Knight takes a1. And now queen takes a1 was played, but I thought maybe white should develop, like go knight f3 first. The knight on a1 isn't going anywhere, and then take later. After queen takes a1, now I think black is really starting to pick up steam, so I go bishop to d7. I decided, I was really thinking about actually like queen f5 check and trying to come in. If king d2, there's d4, I push the pawn, so king e2, and then queen c2 check. Then I thought maybe I'm just kind of helping white get the king to safety. So instead, let's let white play with the king in the center. So I was quite happy when I just came up with the idea to just develop simply, like bishop to d7, because white does have 2 pieces. So, they do have some material. They can kind of plonk something on e5, but I figured I do have enough potential energy in my position that I can just develop, and the attack should eventually play itself. So bishop b3, I win bishop c6, f3, because now white was worried about d4 coming in, which would be very, very annoying. So f3, and here I went h5. And I was quite happy with this move, just kind of getting more pieces into the attack. And now I want to go like h4 and even h3 and really mess with white's position and undermine the structure. And then if white plays h4, then the bishop on g3, of course, is loose. So queen g6 check would pick that up. So king e2 was played, but now d4, and everything is kind of opening up. Knight e4. I took this one. At this point, it was concrete, so I was basically just kind of calculating here, and I had seen that after I take, I go d3 check, all the lines open up, and I'm getting a lot of pieces in front of white's king. So king takes d3, rook d8 check. I could have castled here as well, but queenside, but I think rook d8 is more sensible. King c2. I come in, rook d2 check, king b1. And here I played queen f1 check, but to my chagrin, because actually I really wanted to play this move, bishop c3, which I thought was stronger, actually just ready to take on b2. And if takes, then queen f1 is mate. So that's kind of the idea behind the move. But I didn't quite like that white could play knight f3 here. I take on b2, queen takes, bishop takes, white goes e5. And now black has a queen for 2 pieces, but white is about to win a 3rd piece. it should still be winning for black because I have so many pawns. But I just thought like maybe I have something easier. I actually just didn't calculate far enough because if I just looked, let's say a little bit further, I would see that I could just take here. If knight takes, there's h4. And white's losing. And if bishop takes, then I have queen g6 check. And then queen takes g2. And then I think I am actually just getting a piece back. So yeah, this would have been the end of the game. But okay, I played queen f1 and queen takes g2, which I think is also good enough. Because now I'm just, yeah, I've gotten... let's see, I gave back some pawns, but now I'm back to being 2 pawns up, and the rook is hanging in the corner, and white's queen is on a1. I have bishop c3 coming as well, and so, yeah, a lot of issues for white. So knight h3 played, and now I decided to go bishop to c3. I think actually I should have just taken, because I think here it's just simple, and now black is just up the exchange. But I play here because I just thought it's stronger. And the game did end very quickly after knight f4. But white could have played queen c1. Actually, this would have been forcing me at least to find something. It's still winning for black. I could take on b2 like this, queen c8 check, and go rook to d8. And yeah, black is winning. Or I could take on b2 with the rook as well. And then castle. And then this position is winning. Like, let's say takes. I'll take here and take here, and I have, again, rook for 2 pieces, but now I have 3 pawns along with the rook, and white's king is still really weak. The pawns are weak, but I would have to convert this. The game would go on. So I don't know if I would have necessarily found the best way. Bishop takes b2, I think, is the simplest. But after knight f4, I take on b2, king a3, and queen takes e4, and here it's just kind of over because now white's king is caught in queen b4. Is a huge mate threat in addition to just winning the queen somehow. So this was resigns. So very fun game. And okay, a lot of credit goes to Agni because she made some very bold decisions in this game. Like, she could have played it safe, but she really played very principled here. Like, she could have taken on d5 and then given up the bishop, but she's like, I'm keeping the bishop. And then after e5, c takes d3, she didn't have to accept the sacrifice. She could have played c takes d3, but she takes the piece and forces me to prove it. And so it ended up being just this very fun kind of pretty unique attacking game. Like, I like attacking chess, but it's kind of stressful at times. But this one was fun, and it was kind of cool. Like, with white's king just being on d3, and yeah, black just kind of slowly developing and having to build it up. And so I was pretty happy with how I kind of handle this one. h5 and then d4, and then yeah, getting all the pieces in and eventually finishing it off. So 2 out of 2. Going on to the next game, round 3, I was paired against an Italian player, Francesco Sorcinelli, who I believe in the past has been upwards of 2,200 FIDE, so he's a master. Went down a little bit in the last couple of years, 2050 or so currently, but yeah, I feel like he was definitely a very, very good player. So yeah, I knew this game was going to be a pretty big fight. I once again started with d4, and for this one, I believe I did have some time to prepare, so I saw that he was a King's Indian player, and I decided to play the classical system, d6, bishop to e2. I'm, of course, playing the King's Indian myself pretty much every game these days, but it's nice to play against the King's Indian as well, get some space, and then try to score a win. So e5, I went for d5, the Petrosian variation. I've played this one a couple times. Black played a5, which is the typical move here to get the c5 square. And now I went for bishop to e3, which is one of the main or possible moves in this position. Bishop to g5, I think, is more common. I've also played h3. Bishop e3 is like a third move. And yeah, basically here, white is just developing. One of the ideas is to try to play knight to d2 quickly and get this kind of ideal setup with the pieces in the center, and then look to castle queen side, and then either play on the king side for an attack or play, in some cases, on the queen side as well, because white still has more space there. So very, very difficult, I would say, strategic position. Black has a million options here. He goes knight a6. I went knight d2, kind of following up on the promise. Knight c5, and now g4. And this is kind of one of white's ideas. I used the bishop on e2, queen on d1 to launch the pawn storm. It's very similar to like the h3 lines, the Makaganov variation, h3, g4, where white is pushing on the king side, but here I'm just pushing g4 and h4 pretty much in one go. So it's almost like an improved version. And here my opponent, I think, thought for a little bit, went c6. I pushed g5. Maybe it was better to start with h4. I'm not really sure. And play with h5 like this, but I think they're pretty similar. So g5, knight fd7, and h4. And yeah, now clearly white's king is eventually going queenside. And it's up to black to try to figure out how they want to create counterplay here. So black goes f5. Very, very typical idea in the King's Indian. And I don't really want to take here because I think that would just open up lines more for black's pieces than my own. So I'm not quite ready to take. So I went f3, which I think is correct. And now f takes e4. If f4, then I would drop back bishop f2. And this will be one of the cases where like the position is so close that white could actually get away with castling queenside, putting the king on a1, and then pushing on the queen side as well because of like their massive advantage in space. And because things are so blocked up, it would be really hard for black, I think, to fight in this position with the bishop on g7 being so passive. Yeah, speaking from experience. So black takes on e4, which I think conceptually is the right thing to do. Maybe he should have kept tension. I take back with the pawn. The engine after the game was screaming at me to take with the knight. like screaming, like, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you not taking on e4? And actually it's really interesting. So encouraging black to trade, then taking with the pawn. And I thought that this is kind of helping black to trade off one of their pieces because then their second knight can come out to c5. Their bishop on c8 is now opened up. But compy's compy. You know, compy's going to say what it says. It says h5 and white is strategically doing really well. Rook f7, I can either take on c5, even take on c5, go queen to d2, play this position. Black's bishop on g7 is a really bad piece, and it gives white just a huge advantage, like plus 2, which is quite surprising. It feels like, yeah, in the past it wouldn't be this big, but well, engines have improved a lot, so now they're quite good. So that's really interesting that I could have taken with the knight here, and so trading off a pair of knights, and then that would have been a better version for white. So I took with the pawn. I'm only human. a4, queen c2, just kind of getting ready to castle. cd5, and rook f4. Classic King's Indian sacrifice. I wasn't impressed. I've played rook f4 myself. I didn't dream of touching this rook. It's a very typical exchange sack where black's pieces just completely come alive. Maybe white could even think about it, but I think there's just no reason to. It's just completely impractical. Because here white can just ignore the rook. So I just castle. Because the rook on f4 actually isn't doing that much. And now I castle. I want to just get the king over to safety. At some point, I'll start looking at like knight to c4 maybe, or knight to b5, or rook to f1. Start like talking to the rook, h5 in some cases as well. So here black goes knight f8. And that actually was kind of surprising. I was definitely expecting knight to b6 here to just kind of get the pieces going. The problem with knight f8 is that I can take on c5 here and then take the pawn on a4, which I ended up doing. Actually, I didn't even spend that long here because there are many positions where white wants to make this trade anyway, just for strategic reasons. Like white puts the pawn on a4 and just plays on the light squares. Here, white gets to snag the pawn on a4, and yeah, I definitely thought it's worth it. And I've lost many games as black, like because I just gave up too many pawns on the queen side in the King's Indian, thinking that the open lines were going to lead to an attack. But sometimes, because white is the one with the strategic advantage, so sometimes white can just take the material and hold on to it, and then you're just down stuff. So I took bishop d7. I drop back. Now b5. Black has to continue playing in this kind of spirit. I thought this was perfectly reasonable. I took this one as well. Take, knight takes. Rook takes a2. So this is a critical moment. I definitely felt like white should be doing really well here because I have an extra pawn. And strategically, I thought I'm doing extremely well because the bishop on g7 is still blocked in. Knight on f8 is passive. And I have this very nice d pawn. So like all these endgames are good. And I'm up a pawn. So it's just like so many advantages. Probably should have went with my first instinct here, which is to go king to b1. Just hit the rook. Rook drops back. I go knight a3 or something. Just like reposition. Put a knight on c4. Eventually, I'll push d6 at some point once I'm ready. And yeah, it should be a very nice position for white. But I decided to go knight a3. And now, well, I'm winning the exchange because I'm trapping the rook. But like, be careful what you wish for. And actually, I just blundered my opponent's idea. Just completely did not realize. So he goes check, which he needs to do because otherwise king to b1. So he goes check, I go knight to b1. So this is kind of my point. I trap his rook. At some point, I'll go b3 and collect it, but I don't even need to. The main thing is that the rook is sidelined, and I can go d6 and queen c4. So this is kind of my concept. But I just forgot. Like, I just didn't do a tactics check at the end of the line, and I just forgot to look for tactics. Rook takes h4. Bam. And now if I take back, there's queen takes g5, winning the rook back with 2 pawns to the good, and I haven't won the exchange yet, and the bishop is opened up as well, and so it's a complete mess. So it's pretty fortunate here that I can still play b3 and win the exchange. So b3, now my next move is king b2, king takes a1. So rook takes a3, decides to take right away, knight takes, queen takes g5, king to b1. And now black trades on h1, which I'm not sure. Like, a lot of times it's said that you should keep the rook on the board if you're down the exchange, but it costs time. And now white has a rook to support the d pawn and a rook to support, like, kind of stop black's counterplay. So this one I feel like should be winning for white. Well, they're both winning, I believe, but the question is which one gives black better chances. So he takes knight d7. And I wasn't feeling confident about this position at all. I thought it should be winning for white with best play, with the extra exchange. Black only has 1 pawn, but I definitely felt like I let it go. Like I let it out of control. So I was very upset that I allowed this rook takes h4. And now I felt like I had to kind of win the position, again. No, not that I was like winning before, but yeah, I basically had to like start over. So d6. I wasn't sure what to play here. Because I can improve my knight, I can improve my rook. I decided let's just push the pawn. This feels wrong, but I just wasn't sure if I want knight to c4, knight to b5, queen c4 check maybe. So I was just kind of trying to figure out my options here. h5, I give this check, and I bring the knight back to c2. So eventually I landed on this because I thought like my king is kind of open. Let me keep the knight near my king. But things get messy here. So queen d2, queen e6, knight f6, rook to g1. And it's very tenuous. I have this pressure against g6. It's hard for black to push their pawns, but it's also hard for me to push my pawn. It's hard to challenge this queen. But my plan is I do want to go queen f7 here. Now black threw c4 at me. Very unpleasant move. If I take with the queen, then queen takes d6. He still has his 2 passed pawns. And, I got my b pawn, so I can start running the b pawn. But it's still a game. It's still a game. So I took with the pawn. Because I actually didn't quite see what black's idea was. Because I'm ready to go queen f7 very soon. So if he goes here, I go queen f7, gives check, I go king c1, and the bishop is pinned. So there's no bishop h6. If knight to g4, then I'm pushing the d pawn. So yeah, I wasn't sure what black is doing. We didn't have a ton of time at this point, but he goes queen f2. It's like, oh, that's annoying. Hitting the rook, and he wants queen b6 check. So actually, what I should have done on c4, Engine says I should play b4, which is maybe a move to consider. I don't know. It looks scary. But I think the best thing would have been queen f7. I think this was the move. Hitting g6 first, threatening mate in 2, forcing black to defend with like g5. And now I can take, because now I have the g pawns hit. So queen f2, I have rook g5. Or if queen takes d6, then rook g5 as well. And black's king is getting busted up. So this also would be good for white. But yeah, I didn't find that one. So I take here, queen f2. I go rook e1. But now the check start. And queen a7, and this was very unpleasant, king to b3. But at this point, I realized like how I need to play this position. I realized I need to walk my king up the board, because in all these lines, I was actually definitely worried that my king is just getting checked a lot. There's always bishop h6 in the position, so my king is not super safe in the corner. But I realized if I just walk my king up, then it is a lot safer. Well, at least in some cases. So queen b7, I go knight to b4. instead of queen b7, black had to find this move, knight d7, which I remember seeing in the game and not liking the looks of, because black threatens a very unpleasant knight c5 check. After queen d5, knight c5, apparently it's a perpetual with best play. We can take the computer's word for it. But yeah, so black could have saved the draw if they had found this kind of nice idea. After queen b7, knight to b4, now it's a little bit late for knight d7. It's not as strong. Queen d5 comes with tempo. And black instead played knight takes e4, which I was very, very happy to see, because on knight e4, I can just give it back. And I did it immediately because I already knew that this would be great. Because here I give the exchange back. I'm actually now down a pawn after being up material for so long, but my d-pawn wins the game, knight d5. So black has lost their blockade on the d-pawn, and now my d-pawn is much stronger than either of black's kingside pawns. And then on d5 is good, and my king is actually safe because it's, funnily enough, out of the crossfire of the bishop. So even if black manages to push e4 somewhere, the bishop doesn't really open up against my king like it would if I was on the back rank. So my king is actually much safer on the enemy side of the board, which I think is a kind of important concept in these endgames. So queen d3 check, I just start running my king up, and once the checks run out, then the d-pawn runs. So king c5, black goes queen b3. A little bit tricky on d7. He wants bishop f8, which I think I could have allowed, but I thought this was just stronger, just knight e7, just planting the knight, now threatening all kinds of checks and stuff. So queen a3, black is forced to give lots of checks. King d7, queen a8, I go knight c8, and yeah, now I'm wanting d7. Black played queen c6, pinning the pawn. I go king e7, threatening to push d7. Black went e4. And here I think on d7, black wanted like bishop f8 check, kind of tricky, but I think d7 was still playable, but I just found much simpler king f7, where I just introduce a second threat or second idea into the position, not just going out trying to promote the d-pawn, but going after g6. And now queen takes g6 is basically a mate threat because I'm hitting the g-pawn, the h-pawn, and then yeah, black gets mated on the h-file. And so there's no way to defend. There's one check with queen to b7, but then I could either push the pawn or go knight e7. I think either one is fine. And yeah, the checks run out and black's position collapses. Okay, excuse me. I said there's mate at 3. The main threat is queen takes g6, queen takes g7, of course. And yeah, so here after king f7, black resigned. So stressful game. This is actually the first game of the second day. So it was a 3-day tournament, 7 rounds. 2 rounds on the first day, 3 rounds on the second day. So there's 3 rounds on this day. This is the first round of the triple round day. This is round 3. So yeah, very difficult game. Just went like the full distance of the 60 plus 30. But of course, I was happy to kind of grind it out and sneak out a win in the end. Moving on to round 4, I faced another streamer in the event, which was Canon Master Vahan Nalbandian, originally from Armenia. And he goes by the name Cha-Cha Chess on Twitch, so definitely check him out as well. Very nice guy, and also a very, very strong player. His speed rating is 2150, but I felt like 2155, but I felt like he was actually quite underrated just based off of looking at his games. He had many wins over strong players, and yeah, clearly very, very decent player himself. So I was expecting a pretty big fight in this game, with us both having 3 out of 3. And this, of course, was the second round of the 3 rounds per day on the second day of the tournament. So e4 c5, knight f3. I decided to play d6. He gives check on b5, the Moscow variation, and I play knight to c6. So we kind of transpose into the Rossolimo, castles, bishop to d7, and I've been playing this line a little bit as of late. He goes c3. Knight f6, rook to e1. This is all pretty typical theory, a6. A lot of times white tries to bring the bishop back to like bishop f1, but here he plays bishop to a4. Bishop takes c6 is also a move. But bishop a4, and white's idea here is that if black plays b5, he's going to drop back with like bishop to c2. So this is what I do, b5, bishop to c2, and now I play a pretty typical idea here, bishop to g4. with the point that I want to just take on f3 and play against white's bishop pair with a pretty harmonious development. So h3, white forces the issue, I take, queen takes, and now g6, developing the bishop to the diagonal. I think this is pretty reasonable. I think probably black could play with like e6 as well, but to me this feels like very fluid. Just putting the bishop on g7, going knight to d7, and so on. Eventually black can try to play like a5 and b4 on the queen side. But here comes a4. And this move caught me a bit off guard. Of course, very logical move. White just immediately plays this like Ruy Lopez idea to try to create some weaknesses on the queen side. But yeah, I wasn't quite sure how to deal with this one, because like my first thought was b4, but then white could play a5, and bishop a4 is kind of an unpleasant threat. So, and if I just develop like bishop g7, then white wants to take, and he's looking for e5 ideas. So I think he could play e5 even here without taking on a8, which would be pretty unpleasant. Because if like rook takes a1, I takes on f6, and white's only down the exchange, but black has two pieces hanging. So this looks, and e7 is hanging too. So I think this is good for white. Maybe he can also consider taking here first and then going e5, which might also be kind of scary. So I was certainly worried about these e5 ideas, and I decided to go knight to d7, which actually didn't quite cut it. I should have played rook to b8, which is not a move you like really want to make because it kind of cedes the a file, but apparently this was the right move. And this was still theory, so really I just like hadn't truly done my homework in this line, because I should have known this move, rook to b8. Then after takes d3, bishop to g7, black is still doing okay here. I think it's about equal. And yeah, theory continues. But after knight to d7, the problem is white takes on b5, trades, queen takes, and yeah, I'd kind of anticipated this move ahead of time, but I didn't think it would actually happen on the board, e5. White plays this one, and this one was like pretty sharp and scary once it happened, because when he played it, I realized, okay, well, clearly he's calculated something here. So what's the idea? Now, if I take with the knight, white's point is that he's going to sacrifice the exchange. This is kind of the main idea. And after takes, bishop to e4, he wants to win two pieces for the rook. Bishop takes c6 is a huge threat. I have to go king to d7 here to defend the knight, and then queen takes f7 would probably happen. And so now white is down a full exchange, but he has this like monster bishop on e4. My king is on d7, queen is very active, my pawns are weak. I thought white actually has like fantastic compensation here. I actually kept calculating. In the game, I found this move knight to d8, which I think was a good move, hitting the queen and hitting the bishop on e4. And then there's like a nice line. If white plays like queen takes f8, trying to win material, I would take on e4. And then queen takes rook, queen takes b1, and white can't save the bishop on c1. But white could play queen f3, and then this position I had a very hard time evaluating, because yeah, I feel like black should be okay, because I'm not really seeing how I'm getting mated. White hasn't doesn't have a ton of pieces in the attack. It's only queen and bishop, but it also felt very unpleasant. Like it's really hard to develop. I might lose a pawn at some point. Knight a3 is coming. Maybe there's some queen d3 check in the position. So yeah, I tried to make this work, but I really didn't want to go here. In fact, there was a game like this in the 2008, which is kind of interesting, World Championship under 20 between Sergei Zhigalko and Sinan Sunjirov, two players that both became very strong grandmasters. And that game ended up being won by white. It wasn't a perfect game, but white ended up winning, like a practical example of this position. Although, okay, objectively the computer says that black is fine. I think it's like close to equal. So yeah, that one I didn't really want to do. So I ended up going d takes e5. e6 was also a consideration, but I think this one was just bad. After takes, bishop e4. And yeah, knight e5, queen to d1, and now d4 is coming, and that's a real problem, and I'm just absolutely getting cooked on this with this pin. I think I saw other things during the game as well, but this is good enough. So I took with the pawn. And my idea was like bishop e4. I want to go knight db8. And so I defend the knight. I'm up a pawn. But of course, white here has the initiative. And yeah, he plays d4, which I thought was very logical, just like opening everything up. And it's quite scary, of course, because my king is still on e8. So after some thought, I take cd, and here I went bishop to g7. And with this move, I was kind of expecting that white would take on e5 here. I would castle. And here I actually thought that I'm more or less surviving. So there was like a lot of scary lines that could have happened, but I felt like actually I did a nice job of avoiding them. And here I thought black is actually kind of okay because I'm hitting the e-pawn. At some point I'll play queen a6 to unpin. And I thought I should be doing more or less okay here. Although I didn't really think I was better. For example, like bishop f4, queen a6, knight c3, and if I take the pawn on e5, white can always take back, and they have ideas like bishop d3, hitting the b pawn, and if I want to keep my material or play for a win, I probably have to take here, do something like this. But yeah, I think these kinds of positions generally white is doing well. White just has enough for the pawn. It's just like the b pawn is really weak, and I think yeah, queen d5 is coming, and so it's going to be very, very hard for black to hold on to this. I mean, it's just one line, but yeah, in general, I felt like I'm still kind of basically just on the verge of equalizing. So with bishop to g7, I made a practical decision, and I offered a draw with this move, which I wasn't sure was a good call because just felt like there was going to be another game later that day. There's going to be a third round of the day, round 5, and I didn't really want to draw. I was kind of hoping to run the tournament and get 7 out of 7, but I also felt like objectively my chances of winning this one were pretty slim. So my opponent thought for some time, and then he ended up accepting. I actually wasn't sure. I thought it was like 50-50. I thought he might play on because we both felt like white was having the initiative here. But at this point, once I played bishop g7, I realized actually I think black is more or less okay here. And then I just wanted to see like what is the opponent looking for? Is he looking to play for a win, or is he satisfied with a draw? At this point, I was okay with a draw, playing black. Next round, I'll get white, and then I would still be, I think, in reasonable shape to try and win the tournament. So practical decision, but yeah, one that I definitely did not end up regretting. Round 5, I ended up facing another Italian player, fairly young guy, Julio Beretta, or Giulio perhaps, rated around 2143. I think he was also about 2200 at some point. I'm not sure, maybe not, maybe 2150 or so. And yeah, definitely a decent player. And for this game, I think I just had like a few minutes to prepare. This was the final round of the day, so it's like 3 rounds during this day. And I saw that he was a French player. And I forget what he played against. D4, probably something solid like Slav or Queen's Gambit declined. I'm not exactly sure. But I saw that he was playing the French, and so I decided to try out this line with E4, E6, and then B3. This is kind of like an interesting little line. I've actually faced this many years ago when I was playing the French as black, and I remember it being kind of annoying. And then I was looking into this recently, and I saw that actually it's kind of an interesting line for white to play. So I decided let's just try it out. It's a 60-minute game. And yeah, it would be a good kind of practice trial for this run. So the idea on d5 is to play bishop to b2, allowing black to take on e4. They don't have to take on e4. They have other options here as well, but it's a line, and so this is one of the ideas. And after takes knight to c3, black has to make a choice if they want to try to hold on to their pawn. So one of white's points is that if black plays f5, white will likely play queen to e2, castle queenside, and then play like d3 or f3. Just sacrifice the pawn, but then utilize the fact that the e6 pawn is going to be a long-term target. So white definitely has some really nice compensation here, I would say. So instead, black plays knight f6, which I think is quite reasonable. I went queen e2. And here, black doesn't try to hold on to the pawn. They just give the pawn back and develop normally. And my opponent decided to go bishop to e7. I think there are other moves as well. I took on e4 here. Knight takes e4, queen takes e4, and now bishop f6. And yeah, it's kind of a like weird position. It's like a French-ish structure, although I haven't really played d4 yet. I think that would have been the best move here, and I feel like I should have played d4. And then I think white is just slightly better. In the game, I decided to castle, and basically I was just like not shying away from the trade of dark square bishops. My reasoning was that I felt like both kings would be weaker in the resulting position because black is very likely castling kingside. I'm, of course, castling queenside. And both kings would be missing their dark square bishops, which means both sides would have better attacking chances. That was kind of my feeling. I don't know if this was correct, but that was, that's what I thought during the game. But if I could do it again, I would probably just go d4 here. I don't know why exactly this is better for white. Maybe because white has a bit more space, so it makes more sense to keep the bishops on the board. But yeah, doing it again, I would probably play bishop b2. And I guess another reason is that like probably black wants to bring the knight to f6, knight d7, knight f6. So here black has two pieces fighting for the same square. So by castling, I am basically allowing black to simplify their position by trading off one of these pieces. Now, after king takes b2, in case of queen f6 check, I would go d4, and queen takes f2 is not possible because of knight f3, followed by rook to d2, where black's queen is lost. So that would be a nice one. Instead, black played knight to d7. I go knight f3, and now a5. I think there's different ways black could have played this, could have castled as well, but he decides to start with this one. I go a4, and now black castles, and I went d4. And yeah, we have ourselves like just a classic position here, kind of French structure, opposite sides castling, a couple pieces have traded off, like Rubinstein French, d takes e4 type stuff. And actually, computer was saying I should have started with h4, knight f6, queen e1, kind of like freestyle chess. and then the idea would be to like play knight to e5, and then one day even like f3 and bring the queen out this way, and like h4, h5, which, okay, was not a construction I was kind of aware of. So I go for the normal d4 here, knight f6, queen h4. And now b6 is played. I went bishop to d3. And yeah, I was expecting bishop to b7, where my idea was probably to go knight to e5. Of course, willing to give up the g-pawn because I get rook to g1 and some nice attacking chances. And otherwise, the general plan here for white is to play like either rook e1, rook e3, rook g3, rook h3, lifting the rook on the third rank, or going rook to g1 and then g4, g5, and attacking with the g-pawn this way. So black actually went bishop a6. And this makes a lot of sense because black trades off one of my attacking pieces. But on the other hand, I realize when black takes on d3, I do manage to lift one of the rooks over. And I still have enough pieces to kind of attack here. One move I really actually did not consider in the game that much, actually at all if I remember, but I feel like I should have, was c4. Because I think logically this would have been a very reasonable move, just keeping more pieces on the board and using my very nice light square bishop. There is some concrete issues with this one. So the engine finds like ideas of bishop to b7 and then looking to play knight to e4, which is a bit tactical because it looks like the knight is hanging, but black is trading queens on h4 and then recapturing. And yeah, I don't know. I guess this would have been playable. But I think it's not that easy for black. I ended up playing knight to e5, which is a bit more straightforward, but maybe I would have preferred to play c4. I'm not really sure. So knight e5. Black takes on d3, rook to d3. And this I definitely thought was a critical moment. And I was 100% expecting black to either play knight to d7 here or knight to d5, just one of these knight moves to challenge the queen on h4. Because white is wanting to attack. I want to go like rook to g3, rook h3, g4, g5, and build a really strong attack. And so you can't really, in my opinion, allow this queen to survive on h4 for some time. So I would have preferred something like either knight d7 or knight to d5. The issue for black is that these endgames are maybe a little bit worse. After knight d7 especially, I put the knight on c6. And yeah, white would be pressing here a bit, but I think black can defend. And objectively, it's probably not that bad. Maybe knight d5 was the best move. I think this would have been the most logical. Because it's hard for me to avoid the queen trade. If I go queen to g4, then knight f6. And I can go back queen e2. But yeah, then my queen isn't as active. Maybe this would be relatively best, but yeah, I prefer to have my queen on h4, and I think black is still doing fine. Maybe you can consider knight d7 at some point to try and trade off the knights, and yeah, white's advantage really isn't all that big. Okay, just turned on move sounds, so hopefully those kind of come in a bit. Black played queen d5. So queen d5 is a very ambitious move, I would say. because he gets the queen in and he looks for counterplay with b5. So now it just becomes a strict race. I go rook to e1 because on rook to g3, I think black would have knight to e4, which is annoying, hitting the rook and also threatening queen takes d4 check. So rook e1, black plays rook d8, and now I lift the second rook e3. And so at this point, I'm definitely starting to get excited. I got both rooks lifted, and I'm ready to just attack. I want to go rook to g3, and then the knight on f6 is going to have problems. Now black played b5. So this is where I tanked. I think I still had something like 30 minutes or so here, maybe more. And it really started to tank here because I realized, okay, it's time to calculate. And first thing I was looking at was rook to g3, threatening queen takes f6. But the critical line I couldn't figure out here was knight e4, rook g4, and then f5. Where if I just move the rook somewhere, black is taking on a4, my king is also opening up, it's super sharp. So I have this possibility, rook takes g7 check. But I couldn't quite make it work after king takes, queen h8. Now, if black goes king g8, then it's queen f7 and knight g6 and mate. And so black has to go king h8. And so here I couldn't quite figure it out because if knight g6, black does not take, it just goes king g8. And there's no mate. And after knight f7 check, king g8, couldn't quite make it work here. Knight h6 check, king h8. So I saw I had this draw potentially because black doesn't want to come out, should play king g8. But I didn't see more than a draw. So I didn't really want to go for this, not seeing more than a draw. After the game, I discovered white does have a win here. Rook g3 check. Which is really nice because basically the knight on e4 is overloaded. Black has to take, but then knight h6, king h8, and queen f6 is beautiful mate on the board with white being down 2 full rooks. So I didn't see that one. Basically, I stopped my calculation here, not finding rook g3. Of course, it was from this position I had to visualize. And so I started calculating a takes b5, where I thought black might continue a4. And then I was looking at like knight c6, hitting the rook, hitting knight e7 check. And I was like I thought this might be interesting because I could also just try taking material and then going c4 and just completely clamping down on the queen side with the knight on c6. But that, of course, always feels risky, opening up the king. You never really want to do that. And so I once again started looking for more attacking ideas. And then I thought I found a very nice solution. And that was just like simple move rook f3. And once I saw this move, actually, it didn't take me too long to end up just playing it because I realized there is very little drawbacks to this move. Because white just wants to take twice on f6, and then that opens up the king completely, and black is getting mated there. So if b takes a4, I'm just taking on f6. Queen takes f6, and now my main threat is queen takes f7 check, knight g6, rook h3 mate, or rook g3 and queen takes f7 is also a mate threat here, so basically black just can't defend. The pieces just can't come in. But what to do? If the knight moves, like let's say I was thinking knight e4, I could take on f7, but I was thinking queen e7 is even more annoying here. Because now I want to take on f7 with the queen, force the king over, and then knight g6 check, rook h3 is mate. So, yeah, one nice line here would be like knight d6 or something, defending f7, but then I can just take anyway. And then I still get knight g6 and the mate on the h file. So black probably, I think knight d7 was given as best by the engine. And then I could just take on f7. Knight takes f7, for example. And okay, it's an extra pawn. Black's position is kind of starting to collapse. I can come back knight g5 as well. But in the game, black basically spent all of his time here, which I think, he had to do, just try to figure out how to proceed. He ends up going c5, which is understandable, just looking for any kind of counterplay on the queen side, but of course it's too slow. So rook takes f6. Now if he takes, queen takes f6, that's again just good for white. Black's not saving that. So black's idea is to go c takes d4, try to cause some havoc, but yeah, here white has a lot of moves. Like I could play queen g5, for example, and consolidate the extra piece, or queen g3. Knight g4 is like also playable. But of course, knight on e5 is hanging, so I do have to be somewhat precise here. The rook on f6 isn't hanging that much because I'm kind of, willing to sacrifice that rook just to get the queen in. And eventually I found like a very nice win here, so I just went for it. Knight takes f7. And now if black takes the rook, then queen takes f6 is once again just kind of devastating. I have rook g3, I have knight h6, which is just immediate mate threat, so black is not surviving here. And the real idea comes after rook to d7, which I was very happy to spot in the game in advance when I played knight takes f7. And that was the very nice queen takes h7. So always a pleasure to play this kind of move. Of course, if king takes h7, then it's a quick mate with rook h3 and rook h8. Just really nice queen sacrifice there. And yeah, now white's just breaking through. I'm up a piece. King f8 was played, and now stuff's still hanging, so I wanted to find the most convincing way. And I think I did. Knight e5 check, and here black resigned. If pawn takes rook, I think I was just going to take this one and take this one, and black loses everything, but this is actually mate in 2 after knight g6 check and queen g8, which is kind of nice. I didn't see that one. And otherwise, if the king moves, then white can take on g7. There's rook f7, and rook takes rook, and yeah, everything is falling. So knight e5 was the end of the game. So I was really happy with this one. I feel like this was like a really lovely attacking game. 23 moves, nice miniature. But of course, a big decision, it came from black's point of view in this position. It was really up to black what kind of position they wanted to play. It turns out after queen to d5, I think they were just too slow. Like white's attack was just faster here, and concretely it was just good. So they absolutely, despite not wanting to, let's say, play a slightly worse endgame, they had to try something like knight to d5 and yeah, just fight back in this position. And then of course the result could have been very different. But nevertheless, yeah, I was quite happy with this one, which would then take me to 4.5 out of 5 points. So next came the critical round 6, where I was paired against FIDE Master. I believe this was the number 2 seed in the event, Loris Sarita from Italy, and he was on a perfect 5 out of 5 score and playing pretty well. So basically this was the biggest game for me in the tournament because I was half a point behind playing black against another very, very strong player, and I felt like if I didn't win this game, then my chances to win the tournament were quickly evaporating, because then he would possibly win his last game and then I wouldn't be able to catch up to him. So I really wanted a big fight in this one, and he goes e4. I went for the Sicilian, knight f3, and I decided to play e6 because I looked up some of my opponent's games. I saw that he'd been going for b3 lines here, and I definitely felt like, okay, I can get a big fight in these positions. And I quite liked my opening that I got in this game. Knight c6, bishop to b5, knight g7, bishop b2, a6. White gives up the bishop pair. I take back with the knight, and castles b5. And I actually already feel like black is doing well here. So I'm not sure exactly what is more critical for white. After b3, knight to c6, I think there are different lines. Sometimes white, double fianchettos with g3, bishop to g2. But yeah, not exactly too up to date here on the theory. But this one definitely ends up good for black, because here I just have the bishop pair. I go bishop to b7. White goes a4 now, b4, and d3. And the problem for white is kind of a nice idea for black. If d4, which looks like the most natural move, I can take knight takes d4, and then there's this very nice move here, queen f6. And the point is I'm extracting the bishop on b2, so knight takes c6, queen takes b2. It's just good for black. I'm winning material. And otherwise, the pin against the knight is pretty annoying because white can't go knight to d2, so white can't really develop. I'm going to go bishop to c5 soon. And yeah, black is doing quite well here. So white goes d3. And now I had a question because the g7 pawn is hit. And so basically I had a choice between playing d5, which is what I did in the game, or playing f6, which I think actually was what I should have done. It's like not a move you want to play in many cases, but here it does blunt the bishop on b2. It blunts the knight on f3. It allows me to develop with bishop e7 and castles. And yeah, eventually I'll play d5, and I feel like black should be at least a little bit better. But I kind of rushed a bit. I go d5 right away. Takes, queen takes d5. And basically I was just really interested in ideas of like bishop to d6 and castling queenside and playing against white's king on g1. So knight d2, castles, knight to c4, king b8, and now knight fe5. And otherwise I would probably consider playing f6 myself, because then it would just be really restricting all of white's pieces and trying to just take over the center. But knight e5 I take, bishop takes e5 check, king a7, g2 is hit, so white has to go f3. And now I play f6. And here I actually thought I'm doing well. White comes in, bishop c7, rook d7. He gives a check, I go back. But now e5 is coming. And I feel like the bishop on b6 is not so well placed here, because it's kind of just like out of the game. It's definitely not affecting the king side. So king h1. And now I go g5. I could have played e5 as well, but I thought g5 also has a lot of point. And yeah, my play here is very simple. I thought h5, g4, just run the kingside pawns up the board, try to open lines, and use the very strong battery on the diagonal. And yeah, rip apart white's king with my unopposed light square bishop. I think this one, if you guys don't mind, I think this one deserves diagonal. Yeah, absolutely. So queen e2, e5, queen e4. I drop back. I mean, the endgame I think is nice for black, but I wanted to keep the queens on the board because I thought that would maximize my winning chances here. Queen e2, h5, and rook to g1. So white just starts kind of defending, but the pawns are coming. So g4, e5, securing the bishop on b6 so that the knight can move, h4. And at this point, I'm just going full steam ahead. If white takes the pawn, then of course I'm pushing h3. And when hg2 comes, this is just devastating. The rook is swinging over to h7 as well. And white's king is just in huge danger here. So knight e3. I go f5. Now, once again, if white takes here, I think I could either start with h3, or I think I was planning on pushing f4 first, forcing the knight to move, and then playing h3. And once again, the light squares are just very, very painful here for white. So he goes h3. And now I was just looking for ways to open up his king. So I take on f3, gf, and I go e4. Which makes sense. I'm just trying to open up lines. But I feel like I had better moves here. Bishop d6, for example, just kind of strengthening the position. Bishop h6 also makes sense, where in some cases, actually immediately I'm threatening to take and go f4. And then h3 is falling. So this actually, I think this was the move. I think this would have made it really difficult for white. Because yeah, if he takes on c5, I'm just taking on e3. And no matter how white recaptures, I'm pushing f4. And I don't know, maybe I saw some ghosts here, but nothing really works here for white. Because I take on h3 with check, and then f3 is falling with check. So this white's just not in time. So this would be winning. But I go e4. At this point, I should say I realized my position was very, very good, and I started feeling nervous because it's like, oh, I'm winning this game. It's like it's exactly what I needed. I needed a good position with black. I got it. White's king is like opening up, and now I definitely started feeling the nerves coming in. So white takes. I take. Queen h2 check. King slides over. And he goes f4. And this was very annoying because now it's like hard to break through. Because knight on e3 is just a very nice blockader. So I go bishop d6, f5. And actually I could have gone bishop d6 first. I think this would have been better. And then I don't necessarily have to move the king here, and I can use the tempo for something else. So this was definitely a better option, but okay, I lost a bit of time. f5, queen f6, queen d2. And now queen e5, it's like white is almost mated, but it's really like not that simple to break through. It's not an e3, just covered there. So I just need like this knight to get out of the way. So rook d1, I go bishop c6, which I think was a miss. I could have played bishop b8. Because if white takes the rook, I have queen h2 mate, of course. So white would have to move the queen. And then I don't have to deal with the pressure on the d file. So I think black would have a couple of moves here, but okay, the engine finds this one, which is very, very nice. But this was exactly the kind of idea I had to like slow down and find. which is very possible to do. When you have these two bishops pointed against the king, this is exactly the kind of thing you're looking for. Because, okay, if takes, the diagonals open up, and white has to put something on g2, where black can then basically pre-move queen h2 mate, which is pretty nice. And if white doesn't take the rook, I'm threatening rook takes e3, because the queen is overloaded, and queen h2 is a major threat. And if rook e1, then maybe I can just pile up. Oh, sorry, I can't go rook d8 because bishop is hitting this one. So I'm not exactly sure what the follow-up would be here. Maybe black can continue rook to c3, but yeah, in general, I would say black is still very much in control. But I feel like I shouldn't have allowed it to get this far, because now it's like tough. Now it's like I got to find some like brilliant breakthrough. Earlier, I feel like the position was just completely flowing. So definitely not happy with how I handled this phase of the attack. I think e4 was just way too early. I should have just built up bishop h6. That was the way. So now I go bishop c6, queen e2, king b7. The a pawn was hit. Rook g2. I went queen f4. Rook g6, and here the game just gets completely out of control. Like now white has all this pressure. My king is also in danger, and somehow everything is covered around white's king. Bishop on d6 is under pressure. So I went bishop to b5, knight c4, bishop drops back, bishop to b8, rook takes d7, bishop takes d7, bishop takes c5. And yeah, it's all falling apart. White is ready to go rook b6 check. I took on f5 here, queen takes f5, rook b6 check. And here I should have played king c8, but I was afraid of knight d6. And then after bishop takes d6, I think just like recapturing, even not even taking on a6 with check with the queen, which white could also do, but just like this one. And now it's super scary because rook b8, of course, is a massive threat. Yeah, maybe king d8. I'm surviving. I have bishop c8 here, but yeah, during the game it looked very, very scary. So I decided to go king a8 for some reason. And at this point, actually, I think I was ready to make a draw. Yeah, because I realized I completely messed it up. So if rook takes a6, which white should have played, and then rook b6 back, I think I was just going to go back here and, well, if white wants to repeat, he can repeat. But of course, white has more. And he had this win here after king b7. He could play knight d6 check. It's kind of nice. So rook a6, king b7, then knight d6. And then on takes, not recapturing, because if given time, I have queen takes h3. I have my own play. But going rook a7 check. And now the point is that everything comes with checks. And so the real nice one is king b8, rook a8. So this one, not easy to find. Not easy to find. You know, white had like 3 minutes here or something. So it's not easy tactics at all. If I take, of course, it's queen a6 and bishop takes d6, mate in 2. If I don't take, after king c7, white is taking the rook, and is winning because on queen takes h3, he's got queen h2 check, and like the queen's going. So it's like everything just kind of perfectly works out here for white. I think that was the cleanest win. I think there are other ways as well that would have been good for white, but fortunately for me, white mixes up the move order. He goes knight d6 first, which actually looks really good, because if I take, then queen takes a6 is made on the spot. But of course, this is not a check, so this allows me to go queen takes h3. So now all of a sudden, the game is turned again. So if king to g1, I bring my rook in, and it's white's king that gets mated first. Or at least white, yeah, loses the queen and everything with it. But no, actually, hold on. I think it is mate. So queen h3, let me just finish the line. Rook g8, if here, then queen g3, and bishop h3, and yeah, that's it. G1 is covered, but this should be good enough. So white goes queen h2, but now I trade, king takes, knight on d6 is pinned now, bishop b5. And I'm happy I found that we had like both like, we're basically just playing on the 30-second increment at this point. But after bishop to b5, bishop c7 is a huge threat. White's rook is trapped. And it turns out black is winning this endgame, because I'm winning the exchange, and then I have a bunch of passed pawns to use after the fact. So white takes on b4. He equalizes the pawns with bishop c7. White's rook is trapped. Bishop c5. I threw this in. b4. Now I decide to take. Pawn takes. And I go back bishop c6. I could have actually taken on c5 here. and won with the pawns, but I'm trying to keep it simple. I didn't want to I don't want to go for these complications. I was just trying to hold on to the material here. As long as I don't let the pawns promote on me, then it should be winning for black, because I have two very nice pass pawns and this a pawn as well. At some point I could try to play a5 and undermine white's position and sneak that pawn through as well. So knight c4, again, I got nervous. I start repeating once just to gain time. I go back bishop to b7, bishop d5, I give this check, king comes back, bishop c8. I'm not really sure how to make progress. Like, I'm not finding a way to bring my rook in. Knight c4, finally I get a chance, rook d5, knight e3, and now once the rook gets in, now it's basically over. h3 and the h-pawn brings it home. So c3, I give bishop e6, and now it's just about maneuvering the bishop over to support the pawn promoting. So bishop d4, I drop back, knight f5, I give this check, bishop h5, and it's all over. Knight h4, I just give check, takes, and one of black's pawns here is coming through. Bishop e3, I played f2, and that was the end of the game, because king g2, I'm promoting both pawns. So yeah, very nervy win. It definitely went back and forth. I was like really happy with my opening play in this one. I thought I had a great position after like g5. Like, this is just looking fantastic and really nice position in the middle game. But then of course I just let it get completely out of control, and then white was even winning for a bit there. And yeah, I got pretty lucky with my opponent's blunder. Of course, we were both in time pressure, so these things happen. Both players made mistakes, but yeah, after this one, it's kind of fortunate this endgame just ended up being so immediately decisive for black. But with that win, I ended up getting 5.5 out of 6, and now after this round, I was actually in clear first with a couple players on 5 out of 6, me alone on 5.5 out of 6, and of course just one round left to go. So in the final round, I was paired against one of the players with 5 points, and this is actually another streamer, Anna Kantani from Poland originally. And yeah, so this ended up being the 4th streamer that I played in the event, rated around 2,200 FIDE. So a very strong player, actually having a great tournament. She had 4 wins and 2 draws, I believe, so she hadn't lost the game yet. But fortunately I had white going into the final game. So this was a comfortable situation for me. I had half a point ahead over the field, a couple players trying to catch me with 5. And I thought I had pretty good tie breaks. So I was definitely wanting to win this game, but I wasn't 100% gung-ho on playing for the win. And I thought I should just keep it solid. And if I end up making a draw in this game, then I still have really good chances of winning the tournament, which was, of course, the main goal. So I played d4. I wasn't totally against a draw here, but I definitely didn't want to force a draw out of the opening, because playing white, I wanted to take my chances, force my opponent to equalize first, and because of course if I win the game, then I can just win the tournament clear outright, which would be ideal. So d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, d5. Black plays the Grunfeld defense, which I was not expecting at all. Anna told me this was like a last 5-minute decision for her, just like play some opening. Normally I saw that she was playing like the Benoni defense in many games, which I think is a great opening to play for a win. I actually think she should have played this one, because although I was preparing for this a little bit, she has a lot of experience in the Benoni, and so I think this likely would have given her the best chances in this particular game. Because this final round game, was stressful. It's like we're playing for first place, everything is on the line. I just had this first round game that like completely went the distance, so I was like, hey, after that game I had to like go for a walk and just like chill out for several minutes, because it's just like it really went down to the wire. So this was a surprise, but I can't say it was a bad surprise for me, because I saw that I didn't see any games where she'd play the Grunfeld. So I figured if this is just a surprise opening and she doesn't have a lot of experience in it, then I'm perfectly comfortable in this situation. Because although I wasn't expecting it, I have played against the Grunfeld before, and so I thought that my experience would definitely pay off. So white has many ways of developing the pieces here. I decided to go for knight f3, which is what I've typically done in the past, c5. And now there's a few moves here. I played rook to b1 many years ago. I played bishop to e3 here quite a bit. Bishop e2 is a move, but for this game I decided to go h3, which is a line I've looked at before. I played this a couple times. It's a pretty tricky line. Like in the past, it hasn't been it hasn't been considered to be the most dangerous move because it feels kind of slow, but it is annoying. It stops bishop to g4, and it's just, yeah, concretely seems to give white a reasonable game, and it's not so obvious how black should face it. So queen a5, definitely very reasonable move. I went bishop to d2. This is kind of one of white's ideas. If takes, I take back, and the queen is hit. So black castles. I go bishop e2, rook to d8. I'm not sure if rook to d8 is accurate here. I think typically what black does is they take on d4 and they go queen a3, and they go for a quick like knight to c6, going after the d pawn. And there's some theory here. Black is supposed to be okay if they know everything. But rook d8 I think might be imprecise, because now I castle. The d pawn's still not hanging because the bishop is eyeing the queen. And here black goes queen a3. Because of knight c6, then I would be able to play d5. And in general, I feel like if white gets something like this in, like let's say knight e5, I trade very simply and go c4. And then next I'll move the rook. I think this kind of position is really nice for white. You just have like a big center, f4 is coming, and then e5, or even I could just go like rook to c1 and bishop to c3, try to trade off the dark square bishops. Here I think white would have a really nice advantage. So that's definitely kind of something that I'm hoping for. So black goes queen a3, which was, yeah, kind of unpleasant, but I feel like it's probably not that great because black has lost some time already with this move, rook to d8. So now black is looking to take twice on d4, so I had to deal with that somehow. I played queen to c1, which is probably not the best move, but I thought it's reasonable. I guess rook to b1 here is better. If black takes twice on d4, there's tactics with bishop b4, I think, which is, yeah, kind of scary. Bishop takes f2, I think, is not working, because king takes, rook d1. Maybe I can just recapture, maybe take here, and white is up a piece. But yeah, black, of course, can also take the a pawn, and this is like a pretty typical pawn to give up in the Grunfeld. I wasn't too worried about this, so I think rook b1 is a reasonable move. I think I was also considering, after queen a3, rook c1, which is also fine. d5 is the engine's choice, and then bishop takes c3, rook to b1. Sacrificing a pawn like this, which is very interesting. I would say I have to look into this more. Like, this is like too strong for me, basically. So I played queen c1. I was just trying to like keep it simple. I think rook b1 would have been the normal move. With queen c1, I offered the endgame after rook takes c1. I thought white is a little bit better here. I still would stand by that. But perhaps it's not the most that white could have gotten after queen a3. But black played queen a4. So I was kind of playing the psychology here a little bit, because of course, given the tournament situation, black kind of wants to play for the win because she's half a point behind. If she makes a draw, then I think, maybe you can get some prize, but it's not like the prizes are huge. So playing for first place, I think, is a lot more meaningful here. And that means that, yeah, black tries to keep the queens on the board because she wants to play for a win. But I think that plays into white's favor because the queen on a4 is not well placed. So now rook to b1. Now white, I think, is just getting a nice lead in development. Black played b6. And at this point, I started a tank because with b6, I smelled a rat here. It's like I played so many Grunfelds, and I really felt like after bishop to b5, black's queen has to be trapped. But I couldn't make it work. Queen takes a2. I was calculating here c4. I was trying to, and I thought it's very, very close because I'm throwing rook a1, rook a3. And black's queen doesn't have a lot of squares, but black can take on d4 with the bishop. Let's say knight takes d4, rook takes d4. And now the bishop on d2 is hanging. If I go bishop to c3, black can take on e4 and then go, or actually I think rook d3 and then play queen e2. And so I'm not quite trapping the queen like rook b2, queen a3. It's like, where's white's win? And so I tried really hard to make this work, and eventually I decided against it. Even thinking it's probably good for white just because it looks like a puzzle rush. It looks like a puzzle that should be winning somehow for white. But yeah, I just couldn't quite figure it out. And at this point, I've given up 2 pawns. So if I don't find something and I just end up 2 pawns down, then that could be really bad. So after quite a bit of thought, I begrudgingly played rook to e1, which is not great because I spent a lot of time. And then I just played a move I could have. This was like my initial intention before I realized that maybe I could trap the queen. I could have played this move very quickly. Then after I played rook e1, I realized that on bishop, I realized what I missed. On c4 takes, I could go rook d1 here. And just in my mind, I realized that this would have been good because I just defend the bishop and black's queen is still trapped. So it's not like black can just give up the exchange and get away here. After rook d2, the queen is still pretty much caught here. I think this one and yeah, this one and the queen's just not going to survive. Oh, also there's there's rook d8 check. So no, this is just completely unplayable for black, right? But otherwise, rook a1 and rook a3 is coming, and so black is just not. Black just has no moves. So this would have been, I think, game over if I had found this. And I realized that after I played rook e1, so I got quite tilted here. Because I was just, shoot. I was like, shoot, I missed. I was like, oh, that was it. That was the end. You could have won the tournament. It was I just was like, that was the end of the tournament right there. It's like, you could have won, you idiot. Why didn't you play it? Just calculate for another. So anyways, rook e1, game continues, cd4, bishop a6. I go bishop d1, avoiding the trades because I want to keep more pieces on the board. I have the space advantage. It forces the queen to go back. I bring the bishop out to b3 here eventually, but first I play d5, which I liked because it stops knight c6. And now I thought it's still a nice position for white because I have more space and black hasn't managed to finish their development. But not so easy still. Bishop d3. I go rook b3, and bishop drops back to b5. So looking to play knight a6, knight c5. I was kind of expecting rook to c8 here, and then I think I was going to go queen a3, bishop c4, rook to b1, something like this. And yeah, similar position to the game. But after bishop to b5, this gives white a little bit more time, and I get to play bishop c3, which I was really happy about to play this move. And earlier, the engine was suggesting bishop h6. Here, I think it was screaming bishop h6 was really strong, just trying to trade the bishops, which, okay, black doesn't have to do. So, yeah, I don't know. But in the game, I can force the trade, which is nice, because when the bishops come off, then black's king, of course, is a lot weaker. So rook c8, queen b2. Black trades on c3, has to take again. Queen takes, knight a6. Now knight to d4, and yeah, I still like my position here. Rook to c8, and in fact, things concretely actually get very difficult for black because now I have queen to b2. So rook c8 is kind of an unfortunate move, but otherwise it was hard to play the position for black because the bishop is hit. I'm threatening knight takes b5, bishop e2. I have bishop g4 ideas as well, but after rook c8, queen b2, the bishop is hit once again, and bishop g4 is a problem. So black goes rook to c5 here because if the bishop moves, then bishop g4, and black's position is just collapsing. e6 is met with knight takes e6, and there's a mate on g7. If takes, bishop takes, and if f5, I think there's a number of reasonable options, but knight e6 looks like just immediate lights out with queen g7 coming next. So black goes rook c5, getting the rook off the diagonal, which is very awkward and actually doesn't help because bishop to g4, white's pieces just end up perfectly placed here for the attack, and I end up having a nice little tactical shot here with knight e6 that ends up working nicely. So if takes, bishop takes, check, king f8, queen h8 would be mate. And yeah, otherwise I'm winning the rook on c5. Black is forced to play f6. I win the exchange, knight takes c5, and yeah, there's really not much compensation here for black. It's equal material, and white is doing totally fine. So I, again, got nervous here. I realized, okay, I'm winning the tournament. Let me just shut down the counterplay. Do not allow counterplay. Just slowly take it home. But I think I managed. So rook e3, bishop c4, a3. This reminded me of my a3 from the first game where I was just like, just don't blunder anything, just keep it simple. At some point, I want to break with d6 or e5, but I figure there's nothing wrong with just kind of securing the position because black doesn't really have a lot of ways to improve their own situation. At some point, I'll go f4, e5. Maybe this was a little bit too much, but queen a4 was coming. Queen a4 comes anyway. I go king h2. Once again, just trying to improve. Knight d3, queen to d4. And okay, a little bit of a tactic here. If knight takes f2, then I had planned bishop e6 check, and wherever the king moves, I think I was going to go rook c3. I think this was the idea with just pretty nasty double attack, and black is losing more material. So queen c2 played instead. But now bishop to e2, and everything is more or less under control. Knight e5. And yeah, my first thought was just to take on c4. If knight c4, rook c3 picks up the knight. But black can go queen c4, and then this endgame should be winning for white. But yeah, I thought it would take some work here after b5. And so black can try to kind of hold on to the blockade, put the knight on d6, and it should be winning. But yeah, I wanted to kind of end things sooner, so I'll go f4. And now the knight is hit, bishop is hit, so black is basically forced to take on e2. I take on e5. Black has bishop f1, but rook to g3. Everything is defended. There's no real counterplay, and now the king is opening up, d6 is coming, and so on. So here, actually, black ended up flagging on her way to playing f takes e5. But after fe, queen takes e5, I don't think black really has a lot of chances here because it's hard to make a threat for white. And of course, I'm threatening the pawn. I have queen e6 check. I have d6. I have h4, h5 ideas. So I should be able to convert this one pretty smoothly, even someone with my technique. But anyways, the game ended here. After rook to g3, black ran out of time. And with it, I was able to win the game and end up winning clear first in the tournament with 6.5 out of 7 points. There were a couple of players that ended up catching up closely with 6 points. But yeah, with 6.5, I was very happy to be able to get clear first. So yeah, that was it. Very nervy final game. I feel like I missed a lot of stuff in this game. I don't think we went over all the details, but yeah, I feel like there's a lot of misses. There are many moments I could have played better. Of course, I could have just like trapped the queen, and that would have been a great way to finish it off. But okay, last rounds are always very tough. So in general, I was pretty okay with how I played it, given that it's always a stressful situation. So yeah, that was the tournament. Of course, I was very happy to have won it in the end. It was tough. There was a lot of pressure I felt on me to win it, because not winning it would have been a big disappointment, but I ended up getting it done. I feel like the games were pretty reasonable. I certainly got lucky in some of the games, as you saw, but yeah, usually it's hard to win a tournament without some luck. And yeah, I ended up regaining the points I lost in my previous tournament. So I think I got like 10 points or something from this event. And that ended up meaning that I gained something like 5 or 6 points from my European trip overall from like 4 tournaments, which is not a lot of points, but actually at this point, I will take any rating point I can get. I'm happy to just like stay where I am because the rating deflation has been hitting a lot of players hard. So and there's a lot of underrated players. So I feel like just staying where you are is actually not such a bad thing, but being able to gain a couple points and have a lot of experience to take away and learn from, I think definitely felt like a win. So overall, I was really happy with my European trip. Of course, the performance could have been better, but the experience was amazing. I got to meet so many cool people and interact with so many great players. And I felt like I got to work on my chess. I definitely think I improved from playing all these different games and going over them and reviewing them and so on, and spending a lot of time on chess. And yeah, now I've been back in St. Louis for a bit, and of course the GM hunt continues. My next tournament, I think, will be next month in August in Portugal. I'll be playing the 2025 Maya Open. This is a tournament I played last year in 2024, last August, and I had a good time, so I decided to try to come back. But also, importantly, by winning the tournament in Italy, they actually granted me conditions for this tournament in Portugal because the organizers had some kind of collaboration going. So I ended up gaining like fully paid trip to the Maya Open. So that's very exciting. Maya Open is going to be a really strong event, a strong open. I think some streamers will be playing there as well. So I'm very much looking forward to playing there. And that means for the next month, I'll be training. I mean, I got a lot going on. I'm doing Chess Dojo, as you guys know, like helping run the dojo. There's a lot of work there that we're doing there, trying to build, the training program out. But I'm also still interested in improving my chess. So I'm hoping to spend a lot of time this next month training and hopefully coming to Portugal and having a good performance. And then I'm not sure what else I'll play. I'll definitely be playing more tournaments at the end of the year. But that's my plan right now. Let me just say thank you to everyone who's supported the journey so far. It's been many years, but the journey continues. We're still trying to improve our chess and get better and trying to learn more about this very deep game. So the grind continues. And thanks to everyone who made it this far and watched this far. You're a real trooper. And thanks to everyone who comments on these videos and likes them and so on and so forth. Alrighty, hope you have a great rest of your day, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Take care.